So whether you're brand new to video production or you've been doing it for a while, you've probably heard of the term and maybe even already have used multicam editing before. But I'm shocked to see just how many people don't use it. So I want to take this time to give you a full in-depth tutorial of how to use multicam editing in Final Cut Pro 10, and a lot of the principles apply to any program you're using that does multicam editing, but this one specifically is for Final Cut 10. I'm going to walk you through the sync process, the import process, the editing process, and then the fine-tuned tweaking of the process afterwards. So let's jump right into the computer. We'll make this as short and sweet as possible. Let's get right into it. So first off, if you use Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, a lot of the multicam ideas and things of switching to cameras and editing the actual cameras after you choose the right camera and all that kind of stuff is pretty universal. So some of this may translate even if Final Cut is not your primary editor, but for this tutorial, this is all done in Final Cut Pro 10. And I do use Pluralize, which is an additional software specifically for the syncing of all the cameras and the audio. I know you can do some sync in Final Cut, but I do not use Final Cut Sync at all. I've had great success over the many years using Pluralize, and I've always used that, and that's what I continue to use. So that's how I'm going to give you the tutorial. So I'm going to take you through a ceremony edit, but everything is basically the same concept if you were doing some sort of commercial shoot and there were multiple cameras and multiple audio sources. In this wedding, I basically have 3 camera sources and 2 audio sources. So I have a lav mic on the groom, I have a lav mic on the officiant, then I have 3 camera angles. These are just separate clips because for some reason I stopped recording one of the clips. I don't remember why, but usually it's just 3 clips total, 3 camera angles. First things first, I just quickly create a project called Ceremony Temp, and I make it 1920 by 1080 as my standard 23.98. That's called Ceremony Temp. You'll see it opens it right up, but it puts it right here. So I always take the very first safest camera and I just put it on the bottom. Now this is not actually for putting it in sync right this second. This is just laying the clips out so that Pluralize understands they're different cameras for the actual sync. So that is camera number 1 right there. Camera number 2 is this one right here from the tripod on the left, and then this other 2 short clips here are my cameras. Normally I just let one whole recording happen, but they were coming down on this big tractor, so I just waited because I didn't need the footage before that happened. And then I have 2 audio sources. I got a Ceremony Officiant Lav and Ceremony Groom Lav. So as you can see, I have them all laid out here, cameras and audio sources. That's all you have to do to basically get them prepped. I then hit File, Export XML. Just put it somewhere, wherever you prefer to put it. I have a sync temp folder. From there, go ahead and open up Pluralize and simply go to File, Import from Final Cut Pro 10. It's important that you do this and not add media. Add media as if they weren't actually in another program. But since I'm exporting the XML, it's important to go File, Import from Final Cut Pro 10. Same with Premiere. Once you do that, it's going to ask you to find the XML, and all I do is simply select this one that I just created and I go ahead and hit open. Once you do this, you can see that basically it has labeled these camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and audio recorder. And you simply hit this big, huge orange button called Synchronize. And when you do that, Pluralize does all the magic, and if it's all blue, which it typically is, that means it's all synced. If you see any red clips that are in the front or back, that means it could not synchronize them, and that could be for a couple different reasons. But in this case, you are basically already synced. So when you go ahead and hit Export Timeline right here, it's going to give you a few options. The first one is to create an event with audio replaced, and this basically is not an option I ever use, but it simply creates an additional event with the audio clips trimmed to match the length. So I don't actually choose to do that because I don't find it useful for what I do. So the only ones I use are create event with multicam clip and import automatically into Final Cut Pro 10. So I hit export. Right away it's going to bring up this prompt in Final Cut asking you where do you want to put these new files. So put them on the same place that you want them and you hit OK on both of them. It's going to ask me for both because it wants to know where I want the synced one and the multicam. Now you see it'll create multiple events here. This is really unnecessary. All I do is bring the 2 new ones that it created right into the other event because I don't need them to be a different actual event. So here's where a lot of people get confused. So once you bring it in, you basically see that there was no multicam sequence. Like, where's the multicam sequence that it made? And here's the trick. Create a new timeline called Ceremony Multicam, for example. Do the same dimensions that you did, hit OK. At the very bottom of the entire thing here, you can see that it made a whole ceremony multicam clip right here. See? Now, obviously from here, you only see one angle. But when you see this little tiny box here with the 4 squares, that basically means it is a multicam sequence. You simply take this file and you edit it down to the timeline. I hit the E shortcut, which is what I have routed to bring it down, but that's basically the same concept of you dragging it to here. Now, once it's all in here, the key is you have to have Final Cut show the multicam window. So you have to go up here to View and go to Show Angles. Now I have that routed to Shift Command 7. I don't know if that's default, I can't remember. But when I hit Shift Command 7, you can see that it now brings up the multiple cameras at one time. I'm going to close this window just so that you can see this better. I'm going to open up my multicam workspace just because it's easier to actually see how I have it laid out here. So this is how I typically mix my Ceremony multicam. So I have all the cameras to the left here and I have the main viewer to the right. Now, a couple important things to know before you start cutting, because you might get really confused because audio is jumping all over the place. It is following the cameras and all that kind of stuff. These buttons up here are very important. These are basically going to say, do you want to enable video and audio switching, enable video only switching, or enable audio only switching? Now, in most cases where you're doing some sort of multicam edit, you typically have one of your main audio sources, and you usually want that to remain the audio source, and you just want to cut the cameras. So the key is you want to select the audio source that you want to be consistent, and then you just cut video only after that. Now in a ceremony where we have obviously a groom talking at certain times, we will switch the audio for that specific time, but for the most part, you're usually cutting all your cameras to a specific audio source. So right away, I usually just cut off the beginning where it has all this extra stuff, because this is all from when the audio was running beforehand. I usually go to where it actually starts, and then I just do a top edit with my bracket key, and I cut off the front. Then I go to where the ceremony ended, somewhere around here. I cut off the back, and then that way it's just all by itself there. So I usually go to the very beginning here, and I will choose my audio source. There's a couple ways to choose camera angles and audio sources. You can either A, click on them and they will select. You can see how this now changed everything to just audio. Now that's obviously not what I want to do. So if you would know you want to just do an audio only cut, you could click on this little audio guy right here and choose Ceremony Officiant Lav and cut that, and you'll see that now it kept the cameras, but now the audio source selected is Ceremony Officiant Lav. The key is you want to make sure you go right back here to video switching only. And as soon as you go back to that, now no matter how many times you cut, it's only going to cut the video and the audio is going to remain the same. And that is the very important piece of it. Now what's awesome about multicam editing is that you basically just watch through this, and in real time you hit your number keys 1, 2, or 3 if you have 3 cameras, and it goes 1, 2, 3 are your camera angles. If you had an additional camera angle, you'd see 4. If you had even more than 4, you can do up to 16 angles by just changing this little guy right here to settings, and then there'd be lots of camera angles. I normally don't have that many, so 4 up usually works fine for me. And you simply watch through, and in real time you can just switch your cameras by hitting a corresponding button. So as I'm flying through here, let's just say I fast forward to where the ceremony is actually happening a little bit more here. Let's say as the people are walking here, and I jump to camera 2, and then it moves. I jump to camera 3. I see that that's a good angle, whatever. Jump to camera 1.
You can,
I'm following her down. I jump to camera 2 here. You can hear his audio right now is coming from the priest, because he's right there actually. He's not with the guys yet. And you basically cut through and you cut through.
Okay.
That's very self-explanatory. You also can cut through by just clicking on any clip, and it will just do your cuts. The key thing to remember are these: video only edits, audio only edits. If you're just trying to cut video, make sure that that's selected. As I was making all those cuts, if you come down here in the timeline, you can now see that all my cuts were made. And as you watch through it, you can see that my cuts were made, and the preview window over here actually shows my actual cuts that were made and all that. Yes, that camera's out of focus. It gets fixed shortly. Okay, so all my cuts were made. Now, the great thing about this is the fact that if at any given point you decided, oh, I actually wanted to cut that a little bit later or a little bit earlier, when you're going through your initial multicam cutting, you can just really go through in real time and cut your cameras by watching the things and cut them and just get them pretty close. Then when you go through and fine tune, it's super simple because you can go between any of these edits and you can simply just hover your mouse over it. You'll see that the little icon comes up and you can just scrub. And as you're scrubbing, it's basically showing you on the left hand side of the screen where that cut now is going to end and where that new cut is going to come on the right hand side. So you can move this accordingly and just move these edits around wherever you want at any given point. Also, if you come to the beginning of any specific edit, right where the playhead snaps to the grid, if you simply let it snap there and you choose a different camera, let's say camera 1, you will see that it changes that entire clip to camera 1. If I do camera 2, it switches this to number 2, 3, number 3. The key is when you do that, you have to be at where it snaps to the grid for it to change everything behind it on just that specific edit. So you see if I go here, it changes this whole cut to number 3. Or if I do number 1. But now if the playhead were in the middle of this, not where it snaps, and I do 3 or 2, it makes a new cut in that specific area. So always remember, if I'm looking at this entire angle right here and I realize that was actually the wrong one, go to the beginning of it where it snaps, choose your new camera angle, and it will choose everything after that until that edit. Then you can still refine the edit in between here very simply. When it comes to audio, you can do the same thing. You can do your audio only cut and change your audio source depending on what you want specifically for it. Now, one way that I sometimes choose to edit audio or to edit even certain camera angles at certain spots is if I'm just really quickly in the midst of it, you can right click on any one of these clips and you can see that there's active video angle and active audio angle. So if I was in the middle of this edit, for example, and I actually wanted the audio to be the groom instead and I forgot to change it, I can go up to audio and I can then go to the other page with the ceremony groom and click it and change that audio source. But sometimes in the midst of just editing quickly, I will just right click on it, go to active audio angle, change it to groom lav, and then it will change that clip. Now that's only changing that clip. It's not changing all of them, just the clip you're on. So always remember to do that editing with audio, especially I try to do in advance, knowing when I want to do the audio so that I'm not changing all of these individually. So you've gone through and you've cut all your stuff, you've made your little refinements here and there, you've done things how they want. You obviously can refine these as much as you want. You can create as many additional camera cuts in this and change anything you want. Really simply and really nice to be able to see all this footage at once because you can really see the best angle that you have. Now, where multicam really gets powerful to me is with actual correction of certain things or color correction. Let's say you've cut this entire thing and you have everything going great, and then you realize, you know what? Maybe this shot, for example, over here on the top right, maybe that shot was a little bit more green than I wanted or a little bit too orange. Instead of having to go back and choose every single one of these clips and fix them, or instead of fixing one and having to copy the attributes and paste them every time you ever use that clip again, the secret lies in the double click. If I double click on any multicam area clip like this and I double click on it, it will bring me into the multicam clip. But all this is doing is showing me everything synced up, showing me all my different angles, but it's keeping them as their individual clips. And what's amazing about that is that if I were to take this camera angle, for example, which is the main camera angle where I was moving around, and I were to just put some crazy filter on it, and we're just going to do it for the sake of making it easy for you to see what it does. I would not obviously use any of these to do in this, but for the sake of showing you something really, really different, we're going to put a really ugly aged paper on it. The only reason we're going to do that is so that you can clearly see that it changes it. Now, every time this clip is referenced in this film, you will see that it throws aged paper on. So only every time that it's edited, every time it's cut to that camera, it always is changed. So it makes it really convenient because then if I decided, oh, you know what, I don't like that aged paper at all, which I don't, I could just double click on it, go back to that clip and remove it and then it removes all the times it was referenced. So this is really convenient for color correction. If you're not changing your cameras throughout a ceremony and you realize that one was just underexposed or one was really dark, double click on it, go in there, tweak it the way you would any normal clip using all the same things. If I were to zoom into this and scale it 200%, 300%, every time I come back to that camera, you can see that it's crazy zoomed in. So remember, 2 ways to cut cameras, either using your keys 1, 2, and 3 and cut between the cameras just like you would. I prefer to do that method. Or you can just click at them and it will make your blades. Anytime you're looking to change what clip you chose, make sure you snap that playhead to the beginning of where you want the rest of it changed, and just change your camera angle and it will change it all the way to the next edit point. You can always click between them and scrub around and do anything you want to them. You can always refine as much as you want. And double clicking will take you into this mode where you can tweak things, work on audio, do whatever you want. And just click on this little arrow right here to go back to the multicam view. You'll always know you're in multicam view because you should only see one thing in your timeline. If you're ever seeing this view, you obviously know you're not in multicam because it all is conveniently located. And that's another thing I really like about multicam, is the fact that you can actually just have this entire clip be brought into another timeline. Let's say you're in a wedding and you're choosing a good part of the ceremony that you liked. I can just choose this one clip, bring it into the actual project that I'm working on, and then I still can multicam inside that little section of the project. So instead of having to create a compound clip to do something else, I can just choose specific sections in it, and I can just use them in real time right from the multicam, and I can switch angles and audio sources, whatever I need accordingly, and it works really, really well. So the same way that you can cut video multiple times, you can do the exact same thing with audio. So let's say this was all one camera and you had 14 different audio sources. The same way that you cut video, you can do the same thing with audio. If I choose to do 9 angles here just so you can see both audio sources, if I go to audio only cuts, and then I go through here and I'm listening to the ceremony and I want to cut specific audio, it'll do the exact same thing, but all it's doing right now is cutting the audio sources. It will still make those blades, letting you know that there was a cut that was made, but you can see how it's switching back and forth up top there. I find it easier to cut all your cameras and then tweak your audio after the fact, unless it's a back and forth constant where there's more audio changing than cameras. Then I would do it the opposite way. You also can always go on any clip and just right click on it and change what the active audio angle is or the active video angle. Now what's also really nice about this multicam editing is, just like you do with any clip in Final Cut, if I were to be making a cut, for example, from here to the officiant to the groom, and I didn't want you to hear the big audio shift between them for whatever reason, if I just double click on a clip, just like you can in Final Cut, which maybe you didn't know about that, but very convenient way to just double click it, it'll drop down the audio, and you can do in J and L cut with your audio and fade the two audio sources over top of one another like this, very conveniently between those. So you still can edit the multicams the way you want, but you can do all these really convenient little edits between audio sources when you switch. I find that that's very useful when you're switching audio sources, so you don't hear a sudden jump between the two. It's very convenient that way. Now, one last thing before we end. If you have a computer that is not powerful enough to be able to watch this in real time, if when you hit play, you don't get smooth playback like I'm doing here, and you're getting lots of jittery playback, it's because your computer cannot process that file, those 3 files simultaneously. My computer right now can handle all 3 of these 4K streams simultaneously during a multicam, so I don't have to do any proxies at all. But in the event that your computer is having difficulty with them, which is pretty common, because if you are shooting in 4K, the files can just get pretty big. Very simple solution to that would just be to go to those 3 files that you actually have. So if I went to ceremony, and for example, these were the 4 files that I used in my ceremony, if I just select them all and I go to File, Transcode Media, and go to Create Proxy Media, it will create all proxy files for those. And then make sure that you go to View and choose Media from Optimize to Proxy, and then you'll have no issue at all. Just make sure that once all your editing is completely done and you like all the cuts and all the audio sounds great, change this back to Optimize and Original, or else it will export the proxies, which are significantly lower quality, and that's obviously not what you want. But if your computer's having any issues editing things in real time, even normal editing, but specifically in multicam because it's trying to do a lot at once, you could always just switch it very simply to proxy files, and your computer should have no issues whatsoever. So really quick, a recap. Just create a ceremony temp, lay all your cameras on top of one another and your audio sources, export an XML, open it in Pluralize, sync it, export the timeline back into Final Cut. Once you open up Final Cut, make sure you create a new little timeline called Multicam and drop that Multicam icon file right here onto that timeline. And then go to View, go to Show Angles, and you will see all your angles show up there, and you simply can watch it in real time. Choose your camera angles between 1, 2, 3, 4, all your camera angles. You can always slide between the edits to change things. So when I go through a multicam for the first time, it's really just a rough cut. I'm doing the best I can of choosing the right angles, and then I can go through it again and tweak little differences here and there that will help make the edit even better. But it's such a convenient way to edit, and I think that if you start to use multicam, you will absolutely love it. Don't get intimidated by it. It is so easy to use, so useful, and I think that no matter what, if you're ever using more than one camera for any kind of edit, it just makes your editing easy because you can see in real time both camera angles and always know which one has the best shot. So I hope this was helpful. If this is your first time to this channel, thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you are not already subscribed. Hit the like button if you like what you see. I post videos every single day, so I hope you can come back and check out the channel more often. Have a great day. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you being here. Bye-bye.